welcome to another Warhammer Underworlds lore video. And rather than covering a specific faction this week, we're going to tread into world events because the latest season of Warhammer Underworlds has been released. That is Beastgrave. And just like the set Night Vault, the last season that came out, this opener escalates the stakes and the hellish aftermath of the hubris of Shadespire, the city's denizens, as well as the eternal curse by Nagash himself. So right up top, if you haven't seen my lore video on Shadespire, stop here and go watch that in the link down below. It includes the lore for both Shadespire, the first season, and Night Vault, the second. And it's important to understand the state of the city and the nature of the curse on it. It's kind of vital to understanding how it evolves and intensifies, and so that's what we're going to be talking about today. So with that out of the way, super brief recap, Shadespire is cursed to a hellish existence of undeath. But with the necroquake of Nagash in the realms, everything was destabilized, including this city/prison, allowing the other realms to see it clearly now, and now treasure hunters are flocking to find some way to get in there because they want the treasure, they want the technology, and they want the magic. In response, Nagash opened the Night Vault, a dungeon under the city, and he flooded the streets with specters, ghouls, and night haunt. The important takeaway is how badly the necroquake messed everything up. It seems this curse is fickle, right? Turning this city that was a finely tuned prison, but now with the necroquake, it's quickly becoming this runaway train, and as it destabilizes, opens up and pours its hate into the realms. Now we're going to put a pin there, right? We're going to pause there, and before we go any further, we need to talk about a mountain. More specifically, a mountain in the realm of beasts, Ghur. Check out my video on Ghur in the description below. I really think that's one of my favorite videos I've ever done, actually. I got really pumped and jazzed after that one. But to just kind of give a quick summary in case you don't have time for that, it's a place where everything you see is both predator and prey. And that applies to man-eating flora, monsters the size of skyscrapers, even the geological formations, right? Oceans are described as eating away at the shore. Mountains move and stalk one another. To enter Ghur is to slide into a place on a food chain, and if you aren't working your way up that food chain, you are being hunted down to the bottom. Again, video goes into more detail about that. But in Ghur, there exists a mountain. A mountain among mountains, mind-boggling in size and scope. It pierces the clouds and the heavens themselves. It's said, it's a kind of a legend thing, but that you can see this mountain from any point in Ghur, and it's simply called Beastgrave. Some use that name to refer to like the actual highest spire mountain itself, but the locals like to use that term to describe the entire region around the mountain range, as if whatever goes near it is also consumed by it. Whatever the case, there's a lot of folklore built up around this place. Now, if you're not familiar with Ghur, it tends to breed these highly nomadic and primitive cultures. Again, they're always on the move. They have to be adaptable because large, complex cities will just get wrecked very quickly by large creatures. Because of that primitive culture, they don't have a lot of complex histories. And so the nature of the realm makes complex, like geographical studies, darn near impossible. So everything is based around legend, myth, and like an oral tradition of storytelling. This means that what I'm going to be describing is prone to hyperbole, misinterpretation, and conflicting information. So when the locals describe this mountain in kind of like anthropomorphic ways, right, it's this weird space of both fact and myth, right? The realm makes things alive and hunting, but also there's lore to be considered that these people are using crazy stories to like convey an idea. So with those kind of prefaces in mind, what makes Beastgrave the mountain unique amongst others other than its size? Well, first of all, it lures prey in, which means kind of gives it some sense of malicious intent. All across Ghur, people will randomly have dreams and visions of the mountain, treasures that they seek, fame that they'll get for exploring it. Maybe they had a loved one or someone, a friend, go into the mountain and they can like find them and bring them back. It calls to its victims with whatever they desire most, right? Just whatever will lure people into the Beastgrave. When an explorer first arrives, they find that the mountain is super easy to navigate. Smooth paths, well-defined stairs, the remnants of civilization kind of built into its walls, and along its slopes are entrances and tunnels to the labyrinth within. The actual lore doesn't say this, but to kind of conceptualize it, think of like an ant hill or mountain, whatever like that, where like it's just kind of honeycombed with different pathways. That's kind of how it looks on the outside, just a lot of entrances all over the place. And sometimes as you're passing by these entrances, you'll see the glint of gold or treasure kind of enticing you to walk into it. Try to go inside the mountain itself through one of these caves. Regardless of what draws you to Beastgrave or its corridors, once you're in, it has you, and there's almost never an escape. Though, I will say survivors do make it out, but what they have to endure is terrifying. Now, as I just mentioned, the tunnels that inside the mountain itself are kind of honeycombed, and they're just a straight-up labyrinth, right? They constantly turn, they change in both elevation and direction, and have dozens of intersections constantly. Sometimes you'll be dropped off at a wall that's just kind of like a crazy honeycomb of other tunnel entrances, and so it becomes very disorienting to try and navigate. In addition to that, the cave seems to shift as you go through it. So if you were like walking into it and you're like, I get a bad feeling about this, and you turn around to walk out, all of a sudden you can walk into a dead-end wall, almost as if you had walked through a one-way mirror without knowing it. The treasures that entice you to go into the mountain just keep kind of moving further and further into the darkness, drawing you deeper and deeper inside of the mountain itself. And all around you, while you're in the Beastgrave, are horrific scenes. You'll find previous explorers that are locked in amber, like almost like a bug from Jurassic Park, right? Screaming faces are frozen, while their still conscious eyes watch you but are unable to warn you. And this can be big slabs of amber on the ground that suddenly liquefy and drown and trap you in the same way. And this seems to be how the mountain generally consumes its prey. It ensnares them, trapping them, and slowly eating them over years. And it's this hellish, terrible fate. So the Beastgrave is a mountain, a predator, an ecosystem, and a lure to the foolish. But how does that relate to the city of Shadespire? That was my thought too as I read the lore that comes in the core rulebook for the new expansion. Well, as we mentioned before, the magics that kept Shadespire hidden and stable were just absolutely coming undone, thanks to the Necroquake. This prison and city ripped from reality was becoming a wrecking ball, destructive and unsustainable. Just as Nagash had ripped it from the realms, Shadespire began to whip wildly in the void, and its tendrils of magic spread far and wide, creating little rents in reality, almost like it was smashing against the side of the realms themselves. One such rent opened up deep in the heart of Beastgrave the mountain. Where there once was just a solid, bland rock wall, tore open in reality like a wound itself, and the cataphrane curse of Shadespire began to pour outward, corrupting the hearts of the living mountain. Death magic seeped in every direction, awakening ancient beasts, fallen explorers, and allowing the denizens of Shadespire to pour into the food chain of Ghur that we talked about before. Just imagine if like all of a sudden this like necromantic energy just spawned in the craziest place. A new line of predators had entered the fray, and the ever-winding hellscape of Beastgrave was the latest hunting ground. The very curse that kept the original inhabitants of Shadespire from dying now applied to all of those that walked the lands and city of the Beastgrave and Shadespire. No explorer truly knew death, but were subject to the madness of both places, constantly being hunted with no hope, no rest, and no escape. For example, there's a story in the core rulebook from Beastgrave about a band of Stormcast Eternals heading to a location in Shadespire, only to find that location split in two with a weird passageway in the middle, and when they went through it, it dumped them out in Beastgrave. It's just that simple. It's just literally a doorway from one to the other. And the lore behind this new season of Warhammer Underworlds is a direct escalation of events from before, and we see that Shadespire has become completely unhinged, right? Seemingly able to rip open tears anywhere, which sets the stage for Beastgrave, but would also allow other realms to be visited in the future. So why is all of this cool? I always love to end my videos with that kind of discussion about making this seem more interesting, if you really think about it. I'm super excited about this turn of events in the lore for a few reasons. The biggest one, honestly, I love Ghur. If you hadn't seen that video I mentioned before in the links down below, I really do suggest it, where I go like full ham and gush all over the realm of beasts. To me, it's the most fun and unique expression of the realms themselves. It just exudes this intense feeling. Stuff's always happening. Civilization has to be different or it gets consumed. I just like it. It seems very wild. And beyond that, though, the idea of death magic pouring into what is functionally a giant monster and explorer graveyard is awesome. And I'm excited to see how that gets incorporated with cards and rules and that kind of thing. Because as Beastgrave really exemplifies what's cool about the realms, this kind of like anthropomorphic mountain, a predator in its own right, with all the legends and myths built around it. The idea of luring people in, combined with the curse of Shadespire at its heart, is an awesome combo. There's all kinds of, monsters and men locked inside the amber here, and they all become reawoken, or they come back to life and that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of possibilities when it comes to how death magic affects the carcasses that are littered around Beastgrave that's been consuming them. More entrances to Shadespire means more of its curse spreading and more factions getting lured in. And this season we've already seen previewed some incredible looking models. Factions that are all about treasure and glory and just destruction, and I absolutely love it. It's deeply interesting, and I look forward to reading more about their lore as well. And so friends, that is all there is about Beastgrave at the moment. It seems like it's just the first place that's been slammed, in the first place in the realms, I should say, that's getting really slammed by Nagash's curse. And I hope there's more in the future, but certainly this is a very interesting setup for how things are escalating and kind of coming undone, all because of Nagash, and I just love it. If you have any questions about other Shadespire lore, I have a whole list of videos regarding it specifically, mostly talking about the various factions, but of course the stuff about the city and Night Vault is there as well. Tell me your thoughts on this little escalation here. Do you like the idea of going to Ghur? Do you like the idea of Beastgrave, the mountain itself, and how those two cities relate to one another? Leave the comments down below and I'll check it out. Either way, thank you all so much for watching. Look forward to seeing you in my next Warhammer Underworlds lore video, and happy wargaming.